I was underwhelmed by the result, not necessarily by the talent that I see that's there. Michigan is not just we're just going to run the ball and that's all we can do, especially with a guy like Bryce at the helm. And now you've got a shocker, dedicated quarterback coach who might actually be able to help him with mechanics. Amazing.
All right, as a Michigan fan, whatever that last season was, you're moving ahead. You're looking forward to this upcoming season. What are some realistic expectations for this Michigan Wolverine team?
Like what makes it a successful season?
Yeah, maybe even as a whole, but maybe more specifically, like first-year expectations for head coach Kyle Whittingham.
Yeah. All right. So first-year expectation for Whit. I mean, this is just.
Have you already nicknamed him? Did you just say his name for Whit?
Okay. So first-year expectations for Kyle Whittingham. In one sense, like I don't think it changes from what it would have been under Sharon year 3. Like the whole situation obviously was, because I think that this is important context, right? If you're just kind of jumping in on this thing, when you have typically when you have a coach leave, you have this mass exodus, the roster gets gutted, you've got massive coordinator turnover, and Michigan had a little bit of that. They had a lot of coordinator turnover. They lost maybe 2 or 3 pieces that I would have liked to have seen stay at Michigan, guys who are going to be contributors, guys like Cole Sullivan going to Oklahoma, but the roster was never gutted, and this isn't a brand new promotion for a up and coming coach. This is a guy who's been in a place for decades, has done very well for himself with very limited resources at Utah, and is now getting to Michigan where the wallets are a little bit more open. And so it's an interesting place to step into because I don't think that there's no rebuilding, there's no whatever. You retained Bryce and Jordan Marshall and Andrew Marsh, and you added these guys. Michigan's actually in a pretty good spot right now. There's question marks on the defense, sure. So all that context to say, I think what makes a successful first season for Whit is again just not all that different from what it would have been if Sharon had stuck around, which is number one, first and foremost, you beat your rivals, right? You beat Ohio State, you beat Michigan State. That's the first and foremost thing you have to get done. And then I think a college football playoff berth has to happen. I don't think that missing the college football playoff can be considered a successful season at this point. Like unless you are, unless you're a Purdue where you could win 5 games and feel good about it, right? Or Rutgers.
Hey, calm it down.
I said it.
I would take a 5-win season now.
For a team of the caliber of Michigan or Ohio State, for that matter, missing the college football playoff is not a successful season, period. So if Whit can beat Ohio State in Columbus, by the way, if he can beat Ohio State in Columbus again, if Michigan can make the college football playoff, we've missed it 2 years coming off the national title, you've missed it, then I think it's a successful season at that point. Obviously, you want to see all the things get checked off, but I think a realistic goal, you're probably looking at 10 wins, beating Ohio State, make the college football playoff, maybe even get a playoff, find a way to get to the quarterfinal through either a bye or you win your first round game. I think if you do those things, everything else is gravy at that point.
So looking at a guy like Kyle Whittingham, this always is just kind of the way things happen when you get a new head coach in there. You get a new system, which I don't necessarily think is going to happen. What can you expect this Michigan Wolverine football team to look like, maybe play style wise? Do you think it'll be much different than what you've seen with a guy like Sharon Moore when he was there? It feels like that's the identity. So when these Michigan, the leadership there brings these new guys in, it's kind of with the goal and mindset of, hey, we're going to run the ball and we're going to be a gritty team. From what you've seen, from what you know about Kyle Whittingham when he was at Utah, what kind of play style are you expecting for this upcoming season? Will it even be much different?
I don't think you'll see much difference. And I'm sure the X's and O's guys will be able to point out, we'll be able to point out, oh, well, this schematic is different and this over here, and we're seeing 55% of this versus 62% of that. And like, that's not what this podcast is. Like for the average college football fanatic who knows their stuff, enjoys watching it, and that's about as far as you go with it, we're not going to notice much different, I don't think, because look at the way that Utah plays. Utah plays a style of smash mouth football that's not all that different from what Michigan has built their bread and butter on. Now, I'll also say this isn't Lloyd Carr 1998 either, right? Michigan, while the run game continues to be their identity and probably always will be, Michigan is not just we're just going to run the ball and that's all we can do, especially with a guy like Bryce at the helm. And now you've got a shocker, dedicated quarterback coach who might actually be able to help him with mechanics. Amazing. And I'm blanking on the name. Coy Detmer, I believe, is the quarterback coach. I'm sure people will correct me in the comments if I'm wrong there. They always do. But I think having Bryce and having the wide receiver talent around him, the one thing will help. I think Michigan will continue to be balanced, but yeah, the run game is still going to be the run game for Michigan. Getting guys back out of the portal like Andrew Sprague and Jake Ornera, Evan Link staying around, like all that offensive line should be very talented this year. Now these guys, a lot of them have a year under their belts now. The run game, it's still going to go through the run game for Michigan. The one thing that I think you may see Michigan run the quarterback more. We saw that actually when Biff Poggi was calling plays, right? And Nebraska in particular comes to mind, though not just in that game, where Bryce is an athlete. He's dangerous with his legs. So if you can have a quarterback coach working with him on mechanics, helping him be more, because you can see the talent's there. It's just very raw.
Yeah.
If you can see somebody mold that, and now you've got a coordinator who's willing to call the quarterback run in situations that make the defense actually have to pay attention to it. I mean, that's a really dangerous offense for Michigan at that point.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you haven't really touched on when it comes to an expectation for Michigan this season is Bryce Underwood. Last year, and you and I disagreed on it basically all season on how he performed, but I think having looked at that season as a whole, it was kind of underwhelming overall. And, I would still stand on that hill. I don't know if you've changed your mind ultimately, but I think for me as an outside fan looking at this Michigan Wolverine football program, I'm looking at Bryce Underwood specifically, knowing you've got a dedicated quarterback coach, seeing what Kyle Whittingham can bring to that guy in that room, because he's been the future. He's what all the money has been invested in. That it's a clear cut. This is who this program is running through.
This is the guy.
What kind of expectation do you need to see from Bryce realistically?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Because it's easy to go, well, yeah, I want him to be in the Heisman and whatever. But realistically, for you to feel comfortable going forward with Bryce, what kind of improvements are you going to need to see?
Yeah. I mean, I think, and it's so easy to say this, and it's such low hanging fruit, but consistency. And it's a lot of it is understandable, right? I think it's understandable. And we talked about this even, I think, preseason. I remember specifically talking about it heading into the Oklahoma game, week 2, where I had, we had all these high expectations for Bryce, and I had high expectations, and I said, this is going to be a bit of a roller coaster, because you have a freshman quarterback who it's pretty evident Michigan didn't really want to start right away, which is why they went on and got a guy like Mikey Keene, who ends up getting hurt. And I said last spring, I think Bryce is going to be the guy regardless. And sure enough, Bryce ends up being the guy. So I think that there were a lot of growing pains that probably were unavoidable starting a guy like that, especially going to USC, going to Oklahoma. I mean, you had some difficult games in that schedule. But I do think that there was struggle beyond what I expected, and now that the smoke of the season's kind of settled, I would agree with you as far as looking back and going, I was underwhelmed by the result, not necessarily by the talent that I see that's there, if that makes sense.
No, and I think
the talent is extremely,
that might be where I would land.
The talent is extremely raw, but there's a ton of it. So if you can get a guy to mold it, so I all that to say, I would say consistency is the best thing. We would see these, you'd see Bryce drop back and just, you can see the touch, the touch on the ball was hit and miss, but the accuracy was hit and miss, and the touch on the ball was hit and miss, but he'd go out there, he'd make this beautiful throw down the sideline. And then the next one you'd go, what in the world was that? And so you can see, get consistent touch on the ball, because he can have it, and then he doesn't. Then he's just firing bullets. Accuracy, he puts threads the needle right there, and then it's way off. So that's going to come. That freshman to sophomore jump especially is a huge gap, is a huge growth gap for quarterbacks. I think especially having now a more focused quarterback coach who knows what the issues are. He's seen the tape. He's seen a full year of him playing college ball. It's not high school anymore. And should be able to look at the mechanics and go, okay, here's what we can fix. Here's the mindset shift. Here's the execution shift. And I think those things will pay dividends. Now, unfortunately, you get Oklahoma coming into your building week 2. At least it's at home, I guess. But I mean, we're going to find out real quick what this team's made of.
Yeah, great test early on.
The Rivalry Podcast is part of the Varsity Network from Learfield and the River Podcast Network from River Radio Ministries.
New episodes out every Monday.
Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening right now, and follow on social media at RivalPod and RivalPod.com.
And if you like what you hear, share with a friend so they can listen too.